Bottom line viewers, it's Mitch back here, excited. It's the best weekend of football all season long. I mean, we have divisional round on Saturday and Sunday. We have the national championship in NCAA college football. This is going to be a great weekend of football. We have some fascinating matchups. I think there are some awesome coaching matchups. There are also some epic, I'm talking about epic, all-time great quarterback matchups. Deshaun Watson, Patty Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, the rise of Jimmy G, Kirk Cousins, can he do it? And then we have Ryan Tannehill. But he is taking on the MVP, Lamar Jackson. This is going to be a pretty good week. I'm looking forward to it. There are some massive spreads this week, not just decently large. For the playoffs, these are pretty big spreads. The Niners are -7. All right? We have the Ravens who are -10. That's double digits. Okay, -10. Chiefs are -10. And the Packers, the closest spread of the week, -3.5. That's the updated ones I got so far. It might have changed. It might have not changed. I took it as of this morning, so there you go. That's as close as I'm going to get. So these are my picks for divisional round, straight up, who's going to win, and then versus the spread as well. All right. I don't have much else to say. Really, all else I have to say, I don't really have to go over any of my picks or anything, although I had a really bad wild card week, I will say that, so I'm looking to redeem myself. Before I dive into my picks, make sure you do Gronk Spike, the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL videos just like this, and of course, if you are live, or if you're watching this after the fact, comment your opinion. Who do you guys have winning this week? Give me the winners. If you want, give me your picks, the bets this week. Let me know. Anything else you have for comments regarding the NFL, let me know, and I'll try and answer your questions. Katana, with the $2 super chat, he says Tighten up. And Katana, we're not getting to the Titans quite yet, but thank you for the $2 super chat. We'll get to them very, very quickly. Before we get to the Titans, we need to start off with the opening game of the weekend, and that is the Minnesota Vikings at the San Francisco 49ers. All right? This is fascinating, not only from a coaching perspective, which we have Zimmer versus Shanahan, defense versus offense. As I brought up last week, we had Sean Payton, offensive coach, Zimmer, defensive coach. They kind of had a little bit more of a history regarding the playoffs. But we also have kind of some familiarity within the organizations in terms of their offensive minds behind their offenses. Of course, Gary Kubiak now works in Minnesota, who really started his NFL coaching career taking Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan's father's offensive scheme, to where he went in Houston and utilized that throughout his career to win a Super Bowl in Denver, right? So we have a little bit of carryover from the offensive schemes on both teams. We also have a fascinating storyline in terms of Jimmy Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins. Remember, before the 49ers actually traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, there was a lot of talk of, will Shanahan go after his former guy, Kirk Cousins, a guy that he really liked when he was in Washington? Will he go after him, trade for him? Because remember, he was still on Washington at that time, not on Minnesota. And there was still thought, maybe instead of Jimmy, they'll go after Cousins. So there's a lot of Cousins, Jimmy G. Did the 49ers make the right decision on that sort of talk as well, and storyline in this game? These two teams are not only similar on offense, but they're also kind of similar on defense as well. When you take a look at how their defenses are built, they're built with aggression, speed, athleticism, very fast linebackers, very great athletes on the defensive line. So Similar built teams. And I think that's what makes this game very, very intriguing. All right. So let's start off with the matchup that I think is going to dictate the game. I think the biggest thing that will dictate this game will be the rushing offenses of both teams. Because when you look at it, actually, this is a fascinating part of the entire divisional weekend. There are, I believe, 4 of the top 5 rushing offenses, all of the top 4 rushing offenses still in the playoffs, which is interesting. But the matchup in this game, they both love to run the ball. San Francisco had the 2nd most rushing attempts this year. Minnesota had the 3rd most rushing attempts this season. The Vikings, they have the advantage with the playoff experience and the momentum. San Francisco, I would say, has the advantage with the rest, of course. They have the extra week to prepare for their opponent. And the last time that we actually, I think a storyline here, before I get on to that rushing stuff, storyline here for Kyle Shanahan, the last time we saw him in a playoff game was Super Bowl 51. And remember, Super Bowl 51, everybody kind of blamed him for the loss, even though I think that was incorrect placement of blame, because when you're up 28-3, you need a defense to step up and make plays. And when you're not the head coach, you don't dictate the game plan. All right? Just throwing that out there, defending my guy Kyle Shanahan. Now, offensive lines, big deal. I separated this actually into offensive line in parts of it, right? We have Minnesota's offensive line versus San Francisco's pass rush. We have San Francisco's offensive line versus Minnesota's pass rush, because I feel like more than any, that might not be true actually. I think this game and the Titans-Ravens game, if games are going to be won, the team that is better on the line of scrimmage is going to win these games. And I know that sounds simplistic, but I don't think that can be said for every single game this week. I think when you look at the games that are on Sunday as opposed to Saturday, I think they're more about the quarterback, more about the skill positions, and that sort of thing, more so than the actual physical nature of football. I think on Saturday, it's going to be down to the line of scrimmage. Okay? So let's start off with the rushing attack for both teams, like I brought up. So Minnesota, their running game versus San Francisco's running defense. The Vikings' offensive line is 7th in adjusted line yards. They are 15th in rushing DVOA, which is average rushing attack on offense. San Francisco's defensive line is 13th in adjusted line yards and 11th in average rush defense. This battle, I think, can dictate the game. The Vikings, if they can get their running game going, what that's going to do, especially versus the 49ers. The 49ers are a very aggressive team, so they're going to try and come after the rushing attack of the Vikings. If they're hitting their zone runs, hitting their stretch runs, whatever it may be, that's going to allow even more effective downfield passing from their play action. I don't think you need to have a rushing attack to have an effective play action. The numbers have proven otherwise. You can be effective with play action without having an effective rushing attack. But I do think it's going to make those San Francisco linebackers over-commit. And then you're going to be able to hit them over the top or over the top of their linebackers, whatever it may be, and suck them in, right? But I think that's going to really wear down the pass rush as well, more so than anything. We know that San Francisco's success on defense is really from their pass rush. Their secondary is decent, but it's the pass rush that makes them one of the elite units versus the pass. And if you're wearing down those players up front, that's going to, with the running game, just constantly getting the players kind of like, how do I put this? Physically imposing your will versus their pass rushers, where they don't want to be stopping the run. Let's be honest. I mean, no, pass rushers want to sack quarterbacks. They don't want to stop the run. All right? If you are able to go at them with the rushing attack and it's effective, then that can open up the entire passing attack because you're going to have less of a pass rush, which is absolutely key when you're on the road. Absolutely key. And that's what we saw sort of versus the Saints as well. You know, Minnesota, they ran the ball early on, and it was effective. and it did slow down the Saints, and it effectively in the dome, because in a dome, even more so than what it would be in San Francisco, the noise, the pass rush, that's a big deal. I think if the Niners, on the other hand, can stuff the run of the Vikings, we saw this a little bit versus the Saints, right? The drop back passing game of Minnesota is probably their weakness on offense. What the Vikings want to do is they want to run and they want to play action off of it. They want to have the bootlegs. They want to have their passing game set up by their rushing attack. They want everything in their passing game to look like their running attack, right? So when you force them into obvious passing situations, their playbook is not as large. So if San Francisco can stuff the run and force them to throw just in shotgun or drop back passing game when you know they're supposed to pass, I think that is where San Francisco will have the game won. Now, the interesting part here is that both defenses, I said they're similar, but they also play different schemes. San Francisco plays like a wide 9 front. I'm sure you've heard of it if you've watched the San Francisco game. So they basically try to take away, it's better for pass rushing, but it's also really out wide. So that being said, it's going to allow inside runs. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Vikings can somehow expose the interior of the D-line of the Vikings to, or the D-line of the San Francisco 49ers to be able to gash them up the middle and open it up that way. So we'll see if Dalvin Cook has success in between the guards and the center instead of the tackles, where we usually see the stretch runs. I think San Francisco, just by their alignment, it's a little bit easier to stop those runs as opposed to the runs right up the middle. But we'll have to see. All right, San Francisco's running game versus Minnesota's run defense. Let's flip, because both teams, like I said, very similar offensively. What they want to do is run. They want to play action. They want to make it look the same, right? San Francisco ranks 8th in adjusted line yards, 13th in rushing offensive DVOA. Minnesota is also really close. They're 7th in adjusted line yards, so even better than the offensive line of San Francisco, and 9th in rushing DVOA. So actually, Minnesota, if you compare the two, just based off DVOA and average rushing defense versus offense, Minnesota's rushing defense is actually superior to San Francisco's rushing offense, which I find very interesting. Minnesota is more of an attacking 4-3 kind of style. I brought this up at the beginning. I do feel like the 49ers can have some success with their rushing attack with misdirection and maybe a little bit more with some screens and like counter runs and maybe like some motion with the receivers. I think what Shanahan has done effectively versus Zimmer defenses in the past is some jet sweeps and some fake the jet sweep, play action, fake the jet sweep, screen. I think you need to get these guys kind of over aggressively attacking something. You need to fool Eric Kendricks into thinking it's a run, but really it's play action, or thinking it's a screen and no, it's something else. It's a run, right? So that's what I'm trying to say is like they could get them with a little bit of trickery and a little bit of misdirection. All right, let's go to the passing attacks of both teams. So Minnesota's offensive line versus San Francisco's pass rush. Holy dude, calm down over there. I don't know, you guys probably heard that. Minnesota's offensive line versus San Francisco's pass rush. This is also a huge matchup within the game. D Ford, Nick Bosa, Buckner, Armstead. All of these guys are healthy. All of these guys had a bye week to rest. Yes, D Ford is back. They play the Vikings offensive line, which in pass protection is probably the weaker of the two of what they do in terms of run blocking, pass blocking. What the Vikings are not good at is third and longs in terms of protecting for like the drop back pass game. Like I brought up, I think part of the reason why they're not good at it is because they're not really a great pass blocking line. They really rely on the zone scheme to protect in play action, helps them, and then to run the football. Minnesota's offensive line is 14th in adjusted sack rate. Their weakest lineman that I think that San Francisco will be able to attack is Klein, who's one of their guards. I think if San Francisco is able to put one of their pass rushers like Buckner over top of him. Maybe he can win the one-on-ones there. San Francisco is one of the better pass rushing D-lines in the league. They rank second in sack rate with 48 sacks in this season. Second only to Pittsburgh in sack rate, who finished just above them. The Niners, they have rushers that the Saints don't. I think you're going to look at Minnesota and their offensive line and the way that they played versus the Saints. And I think you're going to say, whoa, they did a really good job on Cameron Jordan. Well, Cameron Jordan's the only guy the Saints have at this point. I mean, Marcus Davenport was injured. And are they going to be able to protect Buckner? Are they going to be able to protect versus Boza versus all these different guys that they have, not just one player? When it's one pass rusher, you're able to double team him. You're able to do special things to take him out of the game plan. But when there's 3 or 4 guys that you have to protect, that's not going to be easy, right? Okay. Then you look at past the offensive line and the defensive line matchup. I do think that if San Francisco is not able to get the pass rush, they'll be susceptible in the back end, and I think Minnesota can take advantage. Thielen, I think, could have another big game. There's a possibility where Cousins gets the ball out really quickly. I think Adam Thielen, one-on-one with any of the corners on San Francisco, is a clear advantage for Minnesota because he's just too good of a route runner, too quick, and especially in the slot where San Francisco is not as good as on the outside. So I think if Cousins wants to have success, he's going to have to find Thielen quickly over the middle of the field and kind of keep San Francisco off balance. Keep those rushers frustrated from getting to him. Get the ball out quickly, Tom Brady style. Something that's big here is Quan Alexander is going to be back for the 49ers. This is huge. He's a great athlete. He's a good cover guy. He's the middle linebacker of this defense. And this defense, as I've spoke before, they play a similar style to Seattle. They play a similar style to Atlanta. And that means that their middle linebacker is very important, especially in coverage. Deion Jones, Bobby Wagner, right? Those Seattle and Atlanta. Quan Alexander is that type of player. And when he was on their defense, they were a lot better in the middle of the field. They were a lot better all around defensively. Alexander, Warner, I think they're going to be big in protecting versus those quick throws over the middle, protecting versus Dalvin Cook in the run game, protecting versus the screen game. They're very fast, and I think having Alexander back just adds another very good piece to this defense that's good in coverage and also in the run game. I think a really fascinating matchup will be Stephon Diggs versus Richard Sherman. Sherman this year has been really good. Diggs has been great at times. And when Diggs is really going, that opens up even more of the offense. So if Diggs can win that matchup, that's going to be huge for the downfield passing attack of the Vikings. Something that's interesting is that San Francisco has allowed the least amount of yards to the tight end position. We know that Minnesota uses Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph a lot, and San Francisco doesn't give up a lot of yards to that position. So that being said, Minnesota, maybe not a lot of success there. And they don't really have a great third receiver. They like to play their tight ends. So we'll have to see. I do think, though, Minnesota could be effective in the red zone versus San Francisco because they have actually allowed 6 touchdowns to tight ends. Not great, but not bad. The San Francisco offensive line versus Minnesota's pass rush. Minnesota, I think they'll take a similar approach to the way that they attacked Drew Brees. I think they're going to try and attack Kirk Cousins through the middle and push the pocket, right? They studied the Atlanta film versus New Orleans. So I think that he's going to be able to, Everson Griffin's going to be able to take advantage of the weaker part of the San Francisco's offensive line, which is, in my opinion, the interior of the line, specifically the center, because San Francisco's center is out. If the starter is out, they have a backup in. So Richburg's been out for the season. So I think Everson Griffin can actually be able to attack and have success from the interior, getting after Jimmy Garoppolo. I think I said Kirk Cousins earlier, but Jimmy Garoppolo's a pocket quarterback. Drew Brees, pocket quarterback. I would say they have about the same amount of athleticism in terms of moving around the pocket, escaping pressure. So it's not like you're playing like a Mahomes or a Lamar or like somebody very elusive, where you have to be more interested about the exterior of your line, kind of like the outside rush, right? Instead of the inside rush. When you're playing a pocket passer, you want them to be pressured up the middle because then they can't step up to throw. So I think that Everson Griffin will again be lined up inside and have an effect on the quarterback. San Francisco ranks 15th in adjusted sack rate offensively. Minnesota ranks in the top 5 in adjusted line yards, in adjusted sack rate, 48 sacks, which is the same amount as San Francisco. You know, like, people are going to say, whoa, the San Francisco pass rush, how deadly. Minnesota, same amount of sacks this year. So both pass rushes are equally as deadly, equally as good. And, you know, Danielle Hunter, beast. He's going to take on McGlinchey and Staley. That will be a great matchup as well. San Francisco. The offense, what will they do versus Minnesota's defense, passing-wise? I think that's going to be interesting. When looking back at the history of this matchup between the two coaches, Zimmer versus Shanahan, 2008, they played, Shanahan was the offensive coordinator of the Texans. 35 points on Zimmer. 2009, Texans again, 28 points on Zimmer. 2012, he was offensive coordinator of the Redskins. 31 points on Zimmer. 2015, it flipped around. He was the offensive coordinator of Atlanta the first season. Only 10 points there versus Minnesota. And then 2018, just last year, 16 points. Now, different 49ers teams last year, as opposed to this year, different Vikings team as well. But still, interesting. I think both of those games that there were less points were actually on the road. They were in Minnesota. So that's interesting. Mike Zimmer has allowed the most yards once and the most first downs once to a Shanahan offense in a single season. So the season that he played Shanahan, he allowed the most yards in that season and the most first downs in that season 2 different times. So Shanahan has had the number of Zimmer for the most part here. Zimmer has countered recently, but I think Shanahan has mostly had the upper hand. So that's interesting. Mike Zimmer really loves to send that double A gap pressure up the middle where he has the 2 linebackers inside, and they kind of do a bunch of different things there, trying to confuse quarterbacks. I think they need to be careful with that, like they were last week versus the Saints. They didn't use that as much versus the Saints. They actually changed it up a little bit. And the reason why I say that is because Shanahan is really creative with the outside runs, like the outside zone runs and the little jet sweep type of things. So if you have those linebackers inside, you can get them trapped in there, and then San Francisco can run on the outside. Zimmer did do a good job last week versus New Orleans, stopping the deep play action shots, stopping the screens of the Saints. So I think that Zimmer will be able to do the same game planning wise to shut down the deep shots of San Francisco and keep everything in front of them and make Jimmy Garoppolo throw the football short and have, kind of make them beat you on long drives as opposed to 1 or 2 big plays down the field. And the 49ers really, unless they get you with like a specific play, they're not really good at explosive plays. They're good at game plan specific plays, and sometimes they'll catch you on just a play that messes your coverage up, or maybe George Kittle will break a couple tackles. But I don't see them going big plays down the field. Will Jimmy Garoppolo rise to the occasion? This is his first playoff game. We don't know how Jimmy Garoppolo is going to react to being in the playoffs. At least Kirk Cousins had that big game last week. Maybe he'll ride the momentum because you like that. But as far as Jimmy Garoppolo, we kind of don't know. It's kind of a up in the air sort of thing. Minnesota did do a really good job on Michael Thomas last week, which makes me believe they'll do a good job on George Kittle. The thing that makes me believe that they'll do a good job on George Kittle is that the Vikings have allowed actually the least amount of... They rank first versus the tight end in DVOA this year. I think part of that is their safety play, Harris and Smith, and then also Kendricks at linebacker. They have allowed the 8th most receptions, so they will allow receptions, but they've only allowed 1 touchdown all season, and they have not allowed a lot of yards. So Minnesota is very good versus the tight end position. That's interesting because George Kittle's the number 1 weapon. Guys that I do think will have success versus Minnesota is their receivers. I think Samuel and Sanders will have success. I think they could be a handful. I think one-on-one it's going to be a lot, especially whoever Xavier Rhodes is covering. These are not the type of receivers that Rhodes is good versus. Sanders, Samuel, they're quicker guys. They're more about the route running and the timing than just straight line speed or of size. So I think those guys will provide to be a handful versus Rhodes. The Vikings are 25th on time of possession on defense and 27th in plays allowed. So that makes me also believe that if San Francisco is moving the football, they're going to have the possession of the game. They're going to be able to dictate the pace. And stats say that teams have been able to do that. Now, the Saints weren't able to do that, which is intriguing. Maybe Minnesota's turned that around. But if San Francisco can hold the possession and dictate the pace, they're at home. They have a deadly pass rush. If they get up on the Viking, it's going to be very difficult because, like I said, the Vikings' weakness is drop back passing. One thing I will say about Minnesota, which is interesting, which I think could make this game very interesting. All right, Minnesota is very good versus short yardage plays, and they're very good in the red zone. They rank first in power run rank, which means they're very good on 3rd and short, 4th and short. They're first in that area, and San Francisco's first in rushing touchdowns, which means they like to run the ball into the end zone, right? Obviously. Well, Minnesota's also second in red zone defense, and San Francisco is near the bottom of the league. They're 21st in red zone offense. So I believe this game, to sum it all up, will be close. I think the matchups are fascinating. I think it's pretty well balanced on both sides of the football. I wouldn't be surprised if this game was lower scoring, but I also wouldn't be surprised if this game was a shootout. I think it really depends on how the offensive lines play. I have San Francisco winning 24-20 in this game. I think it's going to be really close. I will take the points with Minnesota. I think that red zone thing, I think that Minnesota will be able to make some plays on 3rd down on defense. And I do think that Shanahan will also come with some counters to Zimmer on what he's going to throw at him as well. The interesting thing is, I think there are multiple ways this game could go. I think that San Francisco could win in a close game. I think Minnesota could win in a close game. I think San Francisco could win in a blowout. But the only thing I do not see happening is Minnesota blowing out San Francisco. So that's why I am taking San Francisco to win 24-20 in a close game that I think might be the best of the entire weekend because of the coaching matchups that we have and some of the individual matchups. So that game's a really fascinating one to me. All right. The next one, I'll go over Saturday, then I'll get to comments, then I'll go Sunday, then I'll get to comments at the end. So, the next game on Saturday night. We have Tennessee at Baltimore. This game is at 8:15 Eastern Time on Saturday. First thing that popped up to me when I knew these teams were going to be playing each other, Dean Pease. Dean Pease and his knowledge of Baltimore. Dean Pease was the defensive coordinator 2 years ago versus, of the Ravens. And now he's going to be taking on the Ravens in this game. Also, an intriguing part here is that Dean Pease faced Greg Roman in the Super Bowl in 2012 when Greg Roman was the offensive coordinator of the 49ers and Colin Kaepernick running not a similar offense, but some similar things versus Baltimore when Pease was in Baltimore. So there's more coaching intriguing aspects to this game right there. This is the number 1 rushing team in the NFL of all time, actually, in Baltimore, versus the number 4 rushing team in the NFL with the leading rusher in the NFL in Derrick Henry. I will say this. The Titans will not back down. Mike Vrabel is going to come in and motivate his team. He'll have his team ready, and he'll take the same approach he took versus New England to the way he took versus Baltimore. And I don't think the Titans will be scared of Baltimore. I don't think they're going to lay down versus Baltimore. I think this is going to be a competitive game. The Titans have been using Marcus Mariota as Lamar Jackson in practice to replicate some of the things. I think that's interesting. I don't know if it matters at all. I'm just throwing it out there because I thought that was an interesting tidbit there. Baltimore's run defense versus Tennessee's run offense. This might be the game right here, as far as we know it, right? Tennessee was able to beat the Patriots because they were able to score based off their rushing attack, and they're able to dictate the game because of their rushing attack. Now, they only scored 14 points, which I'll get to that a little bit later. But Henry allowed them to basically rest their defense, tire out the Patriots off, or defense, I should say, and then it basically put the game in their hands. So, I think the Titans are going to have to run Henry into the ground once again. He's going to have to take a lot of the football. And you almost wonder, is he going to be a little bit tired, a little bit banged up from last week? We don't know. He's a machine. I doubt it, but I'm just throwing that out there. Because he carried the ball like 30, how many times? Like 35 almost? So that's a lot. Now, I think Baltimore is going to use a similar scheme as New England did in terms of what they do with their defensive backs. New England was mostly aggressive, especially in the second half. They were very aggressive in the passing attack, taking away the receivers and Tannehill, almost forcing Tannehill to beat them. New England actually adapted better in the second half, doing a good job versus Tennessee's rushing attack by playing a 6-1 front, which is a very aggressive way of taking away the run. They could go to the traditional 3-4 defense as well. That could definitely happen. But I could see them doing either or. Maybe they saw what New England did in the second half and says, you know what? That's interesting. We might do this. Or maybe they just go 3-4, take our chances. We'll see what happens. Maybe they don't believe as much in their secondary as New England does. It's another thing. Don't know. But Baltimore has a very good secondary. I think they can replicate the game plan if they choose to. Baltimore, the thing that I think separates New England and Baltimore. Now, I think New England's defense is overall better, and I think New England's defense overall has better DBs. But Baltimore, where they will not be as pushed around as New England, is they have more people that are just large human beings. I know this sounds simple and dumb, but Baltimore has a lot of big people. I've said it many times. Big dudes with big bums. I'm trying to tell you. Okay? They have many more of those than New England does. They have Pierce, they have Williams, they have Wormley, they have Pecco. The list goes on. They got 300-pounders for days. Okay? Baltimore is 9th in adjusted line yards, but the interesting part is Baltimore's weakness on defense is actually stopping the run. They are 19th in run DVOA, and in yards per attempt, they're worse than New England. New England was 4.3, and Baltimore's 4.4 yards per run. That ranks 21st in the league. So, statistics say that Tennessee should be able to run the ball in this game. Tennessee, on offense, is 4th in adjusted line yards and 5th in run offense DVOA. Now, I was talking about the power rank with Minnesota. Tennessee's power rank is 5th. So, they're really good at executing on third and short. I think this is going to be a big deal. I think whoever can win in the red zone and then whoever can win on third and short, it will dictate whether the Tennessee Titans are close in this game or if they have a chance to win, right? If they're able to execute on third and short, move the chains, if they go for it on 4th and 2 or less and move the chains, I think that they have a chance. And they are good in those short yardage because Derrick Henry is such a large person, he almost always falls forward for the first down. Now, Baltimore, something they don't do a lot is play a lot of linebackers. I think they're going to have to do that in this game, which is going to force them a little bit out of their comfort zone. And I think that Tennessee, like they did versus New England, I think they'll be able to pass using their tight ends. I think their receivers might have a little bit of difficulty, but I think using their tight ends, the way they did versus New England, I think they could have some success passing the ball. Now, talking about that, Baltimore's pass defense versus Tennessee's passing offense, Tannehill and the receivers are going to have to make more plays than they did last week. They made no plays. He had 70 yards. I think Tannehill made 2 good throws all day. The passing touchdown, then the third down and long to basically ice the game. 2 passes where he really had to do something. This game he's going to have to do more because 14 points isn't going to be good enough. And in most games, Bill Belichick was correct, right? What I mean by that was Bill Belichick basically said, run all you want, but you're only going to score 14 points. Most offenses, especially Baltimore, is going to score more than 14 points. And New England simply didn't have an offense that was going to score any points, right? But Baltimore does. So Tennessee, you're going to have to pass the ball to win this game. You're not just going to have to be able to run the ball. So in certain situations, they're going to have to pass if they want to score and if they want to keep up to Baltimore. Because Baltimore is going to score. Let's face it. Tennessee might have a decent defense, and they might be a little bit better than people think, but you're going to have to score more than 14 versus the best offense in the league. Okay. Humphrey, I think he's going to cover A.J. Brown. I think we're going to see Peters a lot on Davis, although that could change a little bit depending on who's on the field. I think Clark, their strong safety, is going to cover Jonnu Smith. I would favor Jonnu a little bit in that matchup, but I think Humphrey and A.J. Brown's a really good matchup. If A.J. Brown can win that matchup, then we're talking Titans. We're talking Titans, fans. He didn't win his matchup versus Gilmore last week, but I don't think many people expected him to. He also didn't need to, so there's that. If Tannehill and the Titans are forced into shotgun passes, we saw it last week. They executed on 1 third down versus New England. I think if they're in third down passes, just like San Francisco, just like Minnesota, these teams do not want to be in these drop back passing type of games where they're coming from behind and they're having to score quickly. They're not the Chiefs. Right? They don't have all the creativity in the drop back game. So Tennessee, they play the same way as like what I was talking about Minnesota. They want to run the ball, they want to use play action, and they want to beat you over the top. That's why Tannehill's had a great passer rating. That's why he's had a great yards per attempt, because he's shooting the ball down the field. Shot plays, big plays down the field. And I think if Baltimore gets in these third downs where it's like 3rd and 7, they have a good first down where they stop the run. They have a decent second down. If it's like 3rd and 7 plus, I think Baltimore is going to get off the field. Now, something interesting is Baltimore blitzes the most in the NFL. Tannehill has been good versus the blitz, but something that's also interesting is that Tannehill's also been sacked a lot. Tennessee ranks last in the league in sack rate. They're 32nd in sack rate. The Ravens rank 18th in getting after the quarterback. Baltimore is not good just rushing the quarterback without a blitz. But when they blitz, they do get to the quarterback. They also have a good secondary, as brought up. Now let's flip the football, because I know you want to know, can the Titans even stop Lamar, or else this game's not even going to be interesting, right? Because you need to stop Lamar to beat the Ravens. My question is, how are they going to stop? How are they going to try? How are they going to attempt it? I really don't know. Is Vrabel and Pease going to do something that we haven't seen done versus Lamar? They certainly have the profile and the credentials to be able to do so. Deed Pease is creative as anybody, and he's played Roman before on a major stage. Vrabel is a creative guy as well, and he's ballsy. Now, I do think the Titans have one thing that I think could help them. Just like the Ravens, they have a lot of people that are big guys with big bums, right? But they also may be a little bit too slow. And why I say they might be a little bit too slow is Lamar Jackson is super fast. And the first thing in containing the rushing attack of the Ravens is you need to be able to contain him, right? Lamar can just run past people. That's why the last year in the playoffs, the Chargers just had a bunch of safeties play, because they're like, we need to be fast. We can't be slow. So I think it's going to be a lot on the linebackers. Jayon Brown, Evans, Woodyard, Landry. These guys are going to have to be on it. Also, I think Kenny Vaccaro is going to be a spy a lot of the times. Or if he's not a spy on Lamar, he's going to be one-on-one with Andrews in the passing game. Casey, Jones, those guys are going to be massive at stopping Mark Ingram. Right? But stopping Lamar is on the linebackers and on the safeties. I think they can do it in spades, but I don't think they can do it like consistently. That's the thing. I think they can do it a little bit. I don't know if they can do it all the time. If they can somehow figure out a way to trick the Ravens, then they have a chance of winning. In the passing game, I don't think it's a bad matchup for the Titans. I think Adoree Jackson will be on Marquise Brown most of the time. I think Logan Ryan will be on Willie Snead. Now, the Titans, they're okay at getting after the quarterbacks. They're not anything spectacular. Their strength is stopping the run. And like I said, their strength is in their interior defensive line. So I think they will be able to slow down Mark Ingram. But the question is, can they slow down Lamar Jackson in the running game? It's a different proposition than just facing a team that runs the ball from under center with a normal quarterback. It's just different. Now, the Ravens, I think something that they do very well, and we saw this in particular versus the Patriots, is they do a really good job at creating separation versus man with their tight ends. You know, they do a lot of different like rub routes and like crossing routes to get open with their tight ends. And I think that's the way Lamar is going to be able to beat them. And I think as the game goes on, it's going to be close. It's going to be a battle up front. And then we're going to see Lamar hit a shot down the field once or twice. And I think that's going to be the difference. Now, turnovers could change this game. And also, if the Titans can somehow get the lead in this game by 10 points early in the game, this game changes completely, because then that puts Lamar in a position and the Ravens in a position where they're no longer playing from a strength, they're playing from a weakness. That's the only way I see the Titans winning. They need to get an early lead. They need to force multiple turnovers. If that does not happen, I don't see it happening. You know, the Titans really good in the red zone, 76%, which leads the NFL on offense, but the Ravens are number 2. So I don't really see a clear advantage there. Special teams is interesting. The Ravens have the best kicker. The Titans have the best punter. Maybe field position could help the Titans win this game. It definitely helped them beat the Patriots in New England. Special teams is always a big deal when you're on the road. My score in this one is the Ravens winning 27 to the Titans 16. I think this game's competitive for a large portion of it. Maybe late into probably like early fourth quarter, and then the Ravens are able to pull away. I think there's going to be one big play that Lamar will make that Tannehill will not make. And that's why I have the Ravens winning 27 to 16. All right, guys, I'm going to get to the comment section. There's been a lot of comments. Thank you guys for constantly commenting. I don't know if you're commenting much on the games, but thank you for commenting regardless. Before I get into those comments, if you haven't already, Gronk spike the like button. And if you are new, subscribe to The Bottom Line View for more NFL videos just like this. All right. I'm going to pull up my YouTube feed so I can see all the comments here. Do you guys like the divisional round more or the wild card round more? Some people like wild card round more than divisional round. All right. Run CMC is in the chat. A Human is in the chat. Of course, Party is in the chat. Kevin has the 49ers over the Vikings. Turtle says Henry is the best running back in the league. Kevin has the Ravens over the Titans. Andy says, who is better, Tom Brady or Peyton Manning? Tom Brady. Peyton's great, though. Who's the better back, Saquon or James White? I think you know that answer. Okay, everybody seems to like the divisional round a little bit more. Is Joe Thomas in the Hall of Fame? Not yet. Which quarterback matchup is better, says Mr. Singh? Rodgers versus Wilson or Watson versus Mahomes? Ooh, I'm going to say, because I haven't seen it before in the playoffs, Watson, Mahomes. I've seen Wilson, Rodgers in the playoffs before. So that's my cheap answer for you. Who is your top running back for next year? Barkley. CMC second. All right. Those are all the comments that I can really see that are worth note. All right. So we'll get to the other games. I will get to the comments. If you guys have some interesting comments, I'll get to them at the end. Let's get to the games on Sunday. All right. Kansas City Chiefs versus the Houston Texans. Chiefs -10 versus the Texans. This is at 3:05 Eastern Time on Sunday. This game, of course, the showdown between Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, drafted in the same draft class. Houston did play the Chiefs earlier this year, and Houston won. I didn't see that coming when it happened. The Texans, what they were able to do effectively, they ran the ball down the Chiefs' throats. They threw the ball short a lot to their tight ends, specifically. But the Kansas City defense has changed a lot. They're a lot better than they were in that game. I will note that. And even in that game, where they weren't as good, Watson threw 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. But he did run for 2 touchdowns. So it wasn't the most effective day through the air. He actually threw 2 interceptions. But he did run for 2. Fells, like I said, with the tight ends, had 6 catches for 69 yards. Hyde ran effectively, 26 carries for 116 yards. Tyreek Hill had 2 touchdowns in the game. Another key stat here is that Andy Reid, after a bye in the playoffs, is 5-0. His total record in the playoffs, he's played 39, or he's coached 39 playoff games. He is 20-19, nearly 500, just above 500. But after a bye, he's 5-0. So drastically better after a bye, even though it's only been 5 games. All right, the first side of the football I want to talk about is the Chiefs' offense versus the Texans' defense. If I am the Texans, I will say this to every single defense that plays the Chiefs. Line up in your sub defense and just say, Andy Reid, here you go. Run the ball. I dare you to run the ball. Just do it. Here you go. I'm going to have 3 defensive linemen, 4 defensive linemen. Maybe I'll show some blitz looks. You know, I think something that's interesting in this game is Romeo Crennel. Romeo Crennel did in part with his scheme, force 2 interceptions on Mahomes. What's interesting about this is Romeo Crennel will study the tape of Belichick, and he'll study the tape of Patricia, and he'll study the tape of those games, because if anybody's had okay success versus Mahomes, or the best success versus Mahomes, it's been Bill Belichick. Romeo Crennel knows Bill Belichick. Maybe he'll even call Bill Belichick up and be like, what'd you do in this game? Because he's no longer in the playoffs. So interesting to note is, I could see Romeo throwing out an old school defense where he has a lot of people up, moving around the line of scrimmage, trying to confuse Mahomes. And that could work early on in the game. I don't know if it will last, though. I just think Houston's defense is so outmanned in this game, it is ridiculous. Like, my question is, maybe he can replicate the game plan, but I don't know if he actually has the players to do so. Like, I don't think he actually has the corners to do so. Will Kansas City incorporate Damian Williams in this game? I think he's been really underutilized for Kansas City's offense in terms of being a receiver. He's a good one. And the Texans are not very good versus running backs because their linebackers are slow, and when they're in man-to-man coverage, they can be taken advantage of. Now, I think Tyreek Hill is going to be an absolute issue. Like, who's going to cover him? Is it going to be Roby and a double team? Are they going to have 2 guys on him? Are they going to have a safety deep and a corner underneath? Or how are they going to play Tyreek Hill? Because this is going to be something that's going to be an issue. He scored 2 touchdowns in the first game, and he could score 4 in this game if you don't double team him, right? Now, they did do a good job versus Kelsey the first time. I think they can do that again. I don't think Kelsey... I don't think Kelsey has been as good this year as he was last year, or he hasn't really been as good this year as he's been the last couple of years, but he's still a very good player. But I don't think, like, if you stop... I don't think if Kelsey goes for 100 yards, I think you could still win. I think Tyreek Hill is the guy you really need to stop. Now, for the Chiefs offense, I think Sammy Watkins or Hardman, one of these guys is going to have a big game. And because I think that the Texans, Cornell, are going to focus on taking away Hill. So I think one of these guys, whether it's Watkins or Hardman, they're going to have a big play in this game or they're going to have to step up. And I think one of them will have a big game. Now, flipping to the other side of the football, the Texans offense versus the Chiefs defense. The Texans need to go with the same kind of control the clock game plan they did in the first game. I thought it was a very smart game plan. I think this might have been Bill O'Brien's best game plan all year. You know, that in the New England game, I really feel like O'Brien did a really good job game planning offensively versus those two teams. Kansas City's secondary is going to get a major challenge. I don't think one that they faced all year. Hopkins, Stills, potentially Will Fuller. The question is, will Fuller actually play? Get it? Will Fuller play? Ha! I bet nobody's joked about that before. Will Fuller. Get it? Hopkins needs to dominate this game, though. I think for the Texans to win, Hopkins needs to dominate. And I think if he's able to win one-on-one early on, which he should be able to, that, just like what the Texans are going to have to do to Tyreek Hill, they're going to have to double team him. And that's going to open up Kenny Stills and potentially Will Fuller for big plays down the field because you can only double team, one, maybe two players if you really want, right? But if you double team two players, you're going to be sending less players at the quarterback. So most likely if you double team one player, then another guy is going to be able to take advantage. Now, Will Fuller's status is still up in the air. I think he's going to play, but there hasn't been anything like for sure that said he's going to play. I think he's going to play. I think he's leaning towards playing. Houston, the number one thing they cannot do is start slow. They started slow versus Buffalo. If you start slow versus Kansas City, you're going to absolutely demolished. You're not even going to be in the same stratosphere as Kansas City by the end of the game. They're going to be in space, and you're going to still be on Earth. I mean, it's going to be like 44-7. So you can't fall behind. Don't expect to win a game from coming from behind. If you're Houston, you need to get the lead, or you need to maintain distance. You can't be out of distance because Kansas City's way too explosive. Watson, I think he's gonna need to run again. He's gonna need to run. He's gonna need to make plays, and design runs too. He had those 2 rushing touchdowns in the first game. I think they're gonna have to do that more in this game. Just another element that the Chiefs have to handle. The Chiefs do rank very well versus the pass this year, but I kind of feel like it's a little bit overrated. When you look at their schedule, they haven't really played anyone dynamic offensively. I mean, they played the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, but I wouldn't say they're a super dynamic passing offense. They played the Patriots. Like, we know how bad their offense is. They played the Chargers, Phillip Rivers. Like, they haven't really played anybody over this stretch where they've been really good that's been as good as Houston is through the air. The Chiefs do rank 6th in pass DVOA, though. I will say that. The Texans rank 27th in adjusted sack rate. As an offensive line, and the Chiefs rank in the top 10 in sack rate. So the Chiefs should be able to get a pass rush on Watson, but as we know, a pass rush needs to be able to take Watson down and needs to be able to get to Watson. And even when you get to Watson, he's so magical that even if it's 3rd and long, he's able to make those plays. And the Chiefs, they need to be good on 3rd and long. The Bills, they weren't always able to stop them on those long situations. At the end of the day, one more thing I want to bring up. J.J. Watt, Whitney Merciless. These guys, if the Texans want to win, they're going to have massive games. And this is another reason where you can't fall behind. Because if you fall behind, those guys, become less effective or a lesser part of the game plan, I will say. I think this game's going to be entertaining. I think both offenses will have success in this game. I just think the Chiefs, being at home, they are more explosive than the Texans. I think the Texans have too many flaws on defense to be able to win this game versus such a high-powered offense and such a good team, and Andy Reid being on the bye and the Chiefs being at home, it being an Arrowhead. I think the Texans got their miracle win last week, where not necessarily miracle in terms of beating the Bills, but coming from behind and winning the way they did in the fashion they did. Again, going back to the Vikings and 49ers game, I could see three things happening. I could see the Chiefs blowing out the Texans. I could see the Chiefs winning a close game. I could see the Texans winning a close game. I cannot see the Texans blowing the Chiefs out. I can't. I just can't. So, that being... Also, Chris Jones might have, like, a couple sacks in this game, too. He's going to be a difference maker. I picked the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl. I need to at least pick them to win a game in the playoffs. And I think they will. I mean, offensively, I don't think the Texans are going to be able to slow them down. Like I said, maybe early in the game they throw some things that are confusing after Patrick Mahomes. But I don't see it. I'm going Chiefs 34, Texans 27. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I do think the Texans will be able to score versus the Chiefs' defense that's been playing better. But I just think the Chiefs' offense is too much to overcome. And you're stretched thin having to cover all their weapons that they have. And there's like 3 or 4 or 5 guys that can beat you. So I'm going to go Chiefs to win this game. But I will take the Texans to cover. I like most of the underdogs with the points this week. All right. The last game is Seattle at Green Bay. Rodgers versus Wilson. The Packers have won 8. All right, let's redo that. I need to say the spread. Packers minus 3.5 versus the Seahawks, 6:40 Eastern on Sunday night. Rodgers versus Wilson. This is the second time they've ever played in the playoffs. The other time was in the NFC Championship game when it was to go to Super Bowl 49 to play the Patriots. The Packers should have won that game, but Bostic tried to be the hero. Never be the hero. Never go full Tropic Thunder. Rodgers versus Wilson. Epic matchup. Two of the best quarterbacks in the game right now. Two of the most electrifying, exciting quarterbacks in the game. I'm really excited to watch this as a fan. The Packers have won 8 straight games at home versus the Seahawks. 8 straight. That includes, I think, 3 versus Russell Wilson. Both have top 10 red zone offenses. But something that's interesting about this is that both defenses are actually better on third down than the offenses are. Did you hear that? Both defenses are better on third down than the offenses are. I think that's fascinating because the Packers, they have an okay defense. The Seahawks, they don't have a very good defense. So I think that's kind of interesting that teams with Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers are not as good offensively on third down as their defenses are. I think it speaks to the lack of sophisticated drop back passing game that each team has, right? I don't think either team is really like opening up all their receivers to get wide open. You know, you never just see like a wide open Packer receiver. You never really see a wide open Seahawks receiver, or you never really see like an awesome scheme play from either team in the passing game. Packers, LaFleur, really good in that Sean McVay scheme with his running game and his play action and the shots downfield. But when it comes, again, 3 of these teams I've talked about already, same thing. In that drop back passing game, a lot of it is Aaron Rodgers making magic. And then for the Seahawks, a lot of it is Russell Wilson making magic. I think that's what makes these games so interesting, or this game so interesting, is that it might just come down to, like I said with the Eagles-Seahawks game last week, what quarterback is more magnificent? What quarterback's more magical? It might just come down to that. Is Russell Wilson going to be able to outduel Aaron Rodgers in his home place? That's interesting. Packers offense versus Seattle's defense. One player that I think is a big component to Seattle's defense has been the guy that they acquired, Quandre Diggs, from the Detroit Lions. His recognition of the Packers will, I think, be insightful, right? He was from the Lions. He played Aaron Rodgers a lot. Matt Patricia had success versus Aaron Rodgers as late as week 17 and has had good game plans. Maybe Quandre Diggs gives a thing or two to Seattle's defense and their coaching staff and Pete Carroll to say, hey, you know what? We did this when we were in Detroit. This seemed to give them issues. Maybe they'll try to replicate that a little bit if Diggs gives some insight there. But I think that's interesting. He's also just a really good player and one of the best playmakers in the back end of their defense. I think Griffin will be on Adams for a majority of the game, although I don't think Griffin switches sides. I think he stays on one side of the field. So that is going to be tough. If Seattle allows Adams to be moved around freely and they don't follow Griffin and match him wherever he goes, then I think if he's versus Flowers, like Adams versus Flowers, I think he could take advantage of that. Griffin is decent, though. Like, I think he could win some reps versus Adams, but Adams should have mostly a field day versus any corner that Seattle has and versus this zone coverage. He's a really good player. He's a really good route runner. He's really good in terms of his chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. So I think Adams probably has like 8 to 12 catches. I wouldn't be surprised if he had 15. I mean, Rodgers is going to go to him a lot in this game. They don't really have much else besides Adams. So that's why I feel like defenses that mostly stop the Packers the best are teams that actually have that corner, that number one corner, who can actually stay with Adams. Now, Griffin is good, but I don't know if he's like truly elite where he could just shut down Adams. I don't think that's going to happen. Jimmy Graham, revenge game. Just throwing it out there for fun. Maybe he gets a touchdown. I don't know. Throwing it out there. Jadeveon Clowney versus Bakhtiari and Bulaga. That is going to be a great matchup. I think if this is the biggest matchup potentially in the entire game. If Aaron Rodgers has time, I think the Packers are going to win. If Aaron Rodgers is under duress, if Jadeveon Clowney is getting after him, if Jarron Reed and Ezekiel Ansah and these guys are forcing pressure, getting after Rodgers, forcing him off his first read, whatever it may be, I think that the Seahawks will win. But if the Packers can protect for Aaron Rodgers is going to throw for 300 plus yards. Now, I will take into account statistics here. Seattle is ranked 30th in adjusted sack rate. The Rodgers should have time then, right? If you're looking at stats. Seattle 30th in adjusted sack rate, that's third to last at getting after quarterbacks. 30th in pressure on quarterbacks. That's not good. Now, Clowney can at times be amazing and take over a game, but Bakhtiari is one of the best left tackles. Bulaga is one of the best right tackles. You need to be able to get interior pressure versus the Packers because their tackles are the strength of their offensive line. If Aaron Jones can get going, I think that's where the Packers offense is going to be unstoppable. That's where they have been really, really good. When Aaron Jones is able to run the ball, that sets up LaFleur's entire playbook to make things happen. Seattle ranks 26th in defending the run and 21st in adjusted line yards. So they're not great versus the run game. They're not awful, but they're not good either. Seattle is also 28th in rushing yards per attempt allowed. So that's 5th worst in the league. 32nd, 31st, 30th, 29th, 28th. Not 4th worst, 5th worst. Seattle is 19th in red zone defense. As I brought up, top 10 red zone offenses on both sides. Pretty equal there. I think that the Packers will score 24 to 34 points in this game. Packers defense versus Seattle's offense. The Seahawks are coming to Lambeau Field, and I don't know if you guys know this, but Russell Wilson's passer rating versus the Packers is the lowest versus any opponent in the NFL. 81.9. I don't know if that has to do with the schemers or the players. I don't know what that has to do with, maybe bad weather games. If this game also has a little bit of weather conditions, I know this sounds weird, but Russell Wilson isn't the greatest in bad weather that we've ever seen. He can have bad games in those type of weather. So I don't think it's going to be like a snowy game or anything like that, but just take a look for the forecast as we get towards Sunday. Some of the matchups on the outside, I think Alexander will be on Lockett. That will be a very good matchup. I think that's fairly even. Metcalf is going to be the guy again. I think it's Metcalf and King. Now, they might decide to put Alexander on Metcalf, or they might just play their sides. I'm not sure for Green Bay, but I think Metcalf should have another big game in this one. He had a massive game versus Philadelphia. He should be able to have another big game here. Green Bay is 10th, though, DVOA versus the pass. They're actually a top 10 team versus the pass. Green Bay is 12th in adjusted sack rate at getting after quarterbacks. So they're a lot better in pressuring quarterbacks than Seattle is. Seattle's 30th. Green Bay is 12th. Can the Seahawks run the ball? I think that's another huge question. The two questions that I think if Seattle wins, they get pressure after Aaron Rodgers and they run the football effectively. Because Green Bay is really bad versus the run. They are 31st in adjusted line yards and they rank 23rd in run defensive DVOA. If you're able to run and supplement Russell Wilson with that rushing attack from Homer and Lynch, then it's going to slow down the Smith Bros and Clark in the pass rush, which is where potentially Seattle could get in a lot of trouble. Because if you're letting these guys tee off on Russell Wilson, the Smith Bros, they have 12 plus sacks each. Clark's one of the best interior rushers, and we saw how Fletcher Cox dominated Hunt last week. Clark could do the same thing versus Hunt. I think that's a mismatch in the pass rush. I think Green Bay will be able to destroy that offensive line a lot of the time. So, at the end of the day, I just hope Aaron Rodgers is able to finish the game and Russell Wilson. We didn't get to see Carson Wentz versus Russell Wilson last week, so we were kind of robbed of that. I hope we're able to see Rodgers and Wilson this week for the entire game, and Clowney doesn't take him out. I'm going Green Bay to win 30-24. The Seahawks have proven me wrong before this season because really they're a team that doesn't make a lot of sense. Really, they're not as talented as their record suggests. They're not a team that I really see as a true divisional round type of team, but somehow they've made it. I think this is the best matchup they could have had in this round. I think if they would have played San Francisco, they would have lost. I think if they would have, if they would have played any other team, I think probably not great for them. But Green Bay is a team that I think they have the best chance of beating because I think it's mostly an Aaron Rodgers versus Russell Wilson. But the advantage I give to the Packers is I think that they will be able to get Wilson, get the quarterback, sack the quarterback, pressure the quarterback more than the Seahawks are able to pressure Rodgers. And I think that's the difference in this game. Plus Lambeau Field, at home. Rodgers is good in Lambeau Field, a lot better than on the road. I'm going Green Bay to win, and I'm going Green Bay to cover 30-24. I don't love this game in terms of betting, though. I'm not betting on this game because I think there's too many outcomes for this game. I do think it's going to be a close game, though. Pretty much no matter what. I don't know if any team's going to blow anyone out. And we know Seattle's not going to blow anyone out because they never have. But the Packers, they're not good enough either. I just don't see that happening. So I think this is within a touchdown on Sunday. And maybe I should actually take the 3.5 now considering it. Yeah, maybe I should. I don't know. But my score dictates that I should take Green Bay. I don't know. I just don't know about that one. So I wouldn't suggest betting on that game. All right, so those are the picks, preview, week, divisional round, playoffs. I have the Niners beating the Vikings 24-20. I have the Ravens beating the Titans 27-16. I have the Chiefs beating the Texans 34-27. And I have the Packers over Seattle 30-24. There we go. All right, let's get to the comments for the last time. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, Gronk spike the like button. Subscribe to the channel. All right. Turtle says Seahawks 25-20. David says the Seahawks are dealing with injuries. That's true. Especially the running backs. I think something I said in there in the preview is they need to be able to run the ball, and they don't really have those running backs that are able to do so. Now, teams have been able to run the ball before with bad running backs. Like it's not like it's insurmountable, but having like Chris Carson would be, I think, a huge deal for this game if they were able to have him, but they don't. A Human says DK Metcalf is a stud. Kevin Stewart says Packers over Seahawks. Major says Seahawks 24-21. Kevin Durkant says Devontae Adams is better than DK Metcalf. I think most people will say that. I don't think that's bold. What else? Jesse says Packers have a great pass rush and an okay secondary. Seattle has Bobby Wagner and Clowney. Booch says DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett get open. Singh says Packers should give the Niners their first loss instead of the Seahawks. First loss? Should've? Is that what you're saying? Should've? Is it snowing, Jesse? Is that actually happening? David says Packers 24-21. Michael says nobody has ever seen a player like DK, and the Packers think they can prepare for him? Rookie coach. For his oldest coach, it's all in Seattle's favor. Nobody's ever seen a player like DK Metcalf? Did you ever watch Calvin Johnson? Did you ever watch Julio? Nobody's ever seen a player like DK Metcalf? All right. He's good. I don't know if he's that good. Jesse says, our pass rush will be too much for the garbage offensive line of Seattle. A Human says, my point is the Packers are overrated, and no one else remembers that this is basically a rebuild year for the Hawks. Pete Carroll put a ton of weight on Russell. No, it's not. They traded for Jadeveon Clowney. It's not a rebuild year, bro. It's not a rebuild year when you trade for Jadeveon Clowney. It was a rebuild year a year ago, maybe. Not this year. The Seahawks are a team that constantly retool, though. And no Clinton Dix or Sam Shields. People are saying that Rodgers chokes. Blake Fredrickson's in the chat. What's going on, Blake? No love for the Hawks. No love for the Hawks. I don't know. I'm like categorized as a huge Hawks hater, but it's just my legitimate analysis. That's just what I believe. I just don't think they're that good. I don't know. They just... Well, I think they were fortunate because they played the Eagles last week. So that was fortunate. And they didn't even get to play Carson Wentz. Like, they didn't look impressive beating McCown. I can't say they were impressive beating 40-year-old McCown. Who's better, Rodgers or Mahomes? Give me the Mahomie. Hot Take says DK is the GOAT. Which home team has the biggest chance of losing this weekend? I think it's Green Bay. Did I ever watch Plexico Burris? DK's faster than Plexico Burris, but size, yes, comparable. Did I know that the Packers lost to the Eagles at home? Yes, I did know that. Eagles were a lot healthier then, though. And that was also kind of fluky. The Packers should have won that game. That was a weird game. And also, matchups are different. I mean, Eagles are a lot better on the line of scrimmage than the Seahawks are. The Seahawks, that's their weakness. Eagles, that's their strength, right? F Your Opinion says Wentz was playing bad. I mean, I think he threw 4 passes. Game just started. Is Matt LaFleur a better coach than McVay? I would say no. If he had Aaron Rodgers, I think they would have won the Super Bowl last year. Nicholas has the Titans pulling off the upset. Yeah, I think... Ooh, likeliness of upsets. I think it goes... Green Bay first. Second would be... I think it's San Francisco. I think it's the NFC. I think the NFC are a lot closer together, but I also don't think they're as good. You know, it's a weird thing. I think San Francisco is a really good team, but I also think that Minnesota matches up well with San Francisco, which makes the game possibly an upset. When you look at the AFC, I think Baltimore and Kansas City are clearly the two best teams in that conference. The Texans have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs before, which is why I give them a chance to win. But the Titans, so many things need to go right for them to beat the Ravens. All right, guys. I think I'm going to end it there. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe to the Bottom Line View. Of course, Gronk spiked the like button. We'll see you soon. The Who Is Better videos should be out by tomorrow. I'm going to make them probably tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. Thanks, guys, for watching. It's been Mitch. Peace out.